Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's Board of Appeals hearing. Before we begin, let me introduce some members of town government that act as advisors to this board. To my left is Paul Hennings, counsel to this board. To his left is David Flynn, Assistant Planning Director. To his left is Blaise Donato, a planner in the Planning Department. Now let me tell you why you're here tonight. New York State statute requires that any town that adopts zoning must also have a Board of Appeals to act as a relief valve that those persons aggrieved by strict application of the zoning ordinance can seek relief without the expense of going to court. Town board can give Board of Appeals additional powers such as special exception approvals, site plan approvals. In Smithtown, the town board has given this board authority regarding certificate of existing use and some special exception uses. The most common kind of application before the board are area variances. Area variants deal with dimensions, such as lot area, frontage, height, setback, and parking spaces. New York State statute mandates that the board must consider the 5 criteria and area variances. When you come to the podium to present your application, you need to address these 5 areas. They're posted here for you. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created. Number 2, whether the applicant has other feasible alternatives. Number 3, whether the variance is substantial. Number 4, whether an adverse impact on the environment will be created. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. The statute requires the board to balance the interest of the applicant and those of the neighborhood or community. This statute further requires that the board shall grant the minimum variance it shall deem necessary and adequate, and at the same time preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The board has the power to impose reasonable conditions for granting variances. Special exception variances are different than area variance. When we have a special exception application, I will explain the different criteria. Regarding procedure, cases will be called in order they are advertised. When your case is called, please come forward, submit your affidavits and mailing receipts to Mr. Donato, and you will be sworn in at the podium. And then you will be given the opportunity to explain to the board why you need the variance. After the applicant is done speaking, all interested parties will be given one opportunity and only one opportunity to be heard. So please, organize your thoughts, keep your remarks factual that are related to the case. And then I will ask the applicant to come back to the podium to answer your concerns. The board will then close the case and reserve decision. After all the hearings are closed, the board will review the cases and decide some of them. Others will be reviewed at a later date. There are 3 ways to find out the results of the case. 1, you can wait until after the public hearing, but there's no guarantee that the board will act on your case tonight. Number 2, you can call the planning department tomorrow afternoon. And number 3, applicants can wait and be notified by mail. We do have one adjournment. Case 16946, Estate of Romanek, is adjourned to August 13th. Was there anyone here for that case? Okay. All right, we'll start with the first case tonight, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First case, number 16937, Stephen Scheinman, 17 Chatham Road, Comac. Location, north side of Chatham Road, 490 feet east of Kings Park Road, Comac. The property is zoned R10. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the rear yard from 50 feet to 46 feet for an existing 386 square foot second-story deck with a 26 square foot pergola. Reduce distance from any lot line from 6 feet to 1 feet for an existing 120 square foot shed. Increase the maximum paving in the front yard from 25% to 28% existing. Increase the maximum paving in the side yard from 25% to 72% existing.
Okay, do you have all your things you can hand in to? Thank you. Is it all right? Okay. May I have your name, please, and will you spell your last name for me?
Yes. My name is Mario Vigliotta, V as in Victor, Igliotta.
And your address, please?
I'm from Jabez Expediting, 648 Horse Block Road, Farmingville, New York,
Okay.
11738.
Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You want to tell us why you're here, please?
Yes, members of the board, I am representing Mr. and Mrs. Stephen Scheinman, who respectfully request 3 variances involving their property located at 17 Chatham Road in Comac. The first one concerning the request to reduce the rear yard setback from 50 to 46 feet. This request is a result of the construction of a second-floor deck on the back of the house that was constructed by the previous owners in approximately 2002. The deck is made of cedar and is attractive in design and does not expose any of the neighboring property owners to a view that would be considered intrusive or unsightly. The deck is comparative to any well-made backyard deck and is appealing to the eye. There are no apparent environmental concerns to either the homeowners or any of the neighboring property owners. The infringement of the town setback by 4 feet is minimal, and it is conceivable that the difference of 4 feet is not noticeable by any of the neighboring property owners. Concerning the variances requested for number 2 and 3, the increase of the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25 to 28% to 25 to 72%, and the decrease of the minimum distance from any lot line from 6 feet to 1.5 feet. These 2 requests are a result of the enlargement of the home's driveway by the previous owner also. The enlarged portion of the driveway is made of concrete surrounded by a collar of Belgian block. It is the opinion of the present homeowner that the enlarged portion of the driveway is attractive in design and does not expose any of the neighboring property owners to a view that would be considered intrusive or unsightly. Both the present and previous property owners have told me that they are not aware of any complaints or concerns by any of the neighboring property owners for any of the improvements made to the property requiring these variance requests. So on behalf of my clients, the Scheinmans, I respectfully request that you grant these 3 variance requests.
Okay, thank you. Planning? Gentlemen? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Regularly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Madam Chair, the next case on the agenda, 16938, Chris and Karen Bush, 18 Glenmere Lane, Comac, location northwest corner of Glenmere Lane and RJ Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicants request a variance to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 40 feet to 38 feet for an existing 56-square-foot portico, reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 50 feet to 45 feet for a proposed 99-square-foot first floor addition and 286-square-foot second floor addition.
May I have your name, please?
My name is Chris Bush. I am the homeowner of 18 Glenmere Lane.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You want to tell us why you're here, please?
We are here for the acceptance of 2 variances. The first one being a portico in the front yard that was built by the previous owner that is impacting by 2 feet. As far as we know, it was built up to code. Like I said, the first homeowners that we bought it from installed it. The second variance is the backyard. We're going from 50 feet to 45 feet for a proposed enlargement of our den by 99 square feet. And on the second level, we have a upstairs deck that is causing us problems now. It's a flat roof, so it's a lot of leakage going into our den. We've repaired it about 3 or 4 times, so with this, we decided to extend the upper level along with the den on the lower level. As far as environmental, we're not taking down any trees. We're not changing the backyard as far as trees and obstruction to neighbors. We're a corner lot, so us going back by that footage is the side view of our backyard neighbors, so we don't feel that we're affecting their living or how they feel like, you know, that we're obstructing their yard or whatever they do. And we're just trying to make the house a little more livable for today's standard, make a little bigger den. We do entertaining as far as holidays. We have 1 son, and we're hoping to have another child, so we're just making it more livable up to today's standards. And
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Planning? Gentlemen? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Regularly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the next case, 16939, Paul and Rosanna Dill, 39 Churchill Lane, Smithtown, location north side of Churchill Lane, 101 feet east of Fair Oaks Lane. The property is zoned R21. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the front yard setback from 50 feet to 38 feet for a 341 square foot garage and 178 square foot breezeway.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicants. I've submitted affidavits of posting and mailing to David Flynn. I'd just like to point out that Paul and Rosanna Dill bought this property with a very old house on it and an old garage, and they're in the process of fixing it all up. The garage is in the same place where it was since the house was built, and they're also putting a breezeway to connect the garage with the house. And apparently there was a breezeway there many years ago because the concrete floor for that breezeway still exists. So we're asking the board to give us a setback variance in the front yard because it actually exists and has existed for many years. We don't think that this will make a change in the character of the area. Whether I got to take my glasses off. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, it's not. It's been like that probably for 50 or 60 years. Can we get the benefit by some other means? Well, I guess we could throw down the garage and move everything back, but for what reason? It's been in there for so many years, and nobody's ever had any complaints about it. Whether the proposed variance would have any effect on the environment, it's a residential dwelling and would have no more effect than any other dwelling in the area. Was the difficulty self-created? No. We're here asking this board to grant us this variance, and as I said, those structures, the garage and even the breezeway was there from the very beginning. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Gentlemen? Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Regularly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Madam Chair, the next case, number 16940, Christine and Peter Cataldo, 24 Clover Drive, Smithtown, location northeast corner of Veterans Memorial Highway and Clover Drive. The property is zoned
Okay.
R21. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 50 feet to 39 feet, 41 feet existing, for a proposed 649 square foot first floor addition, 440 square foot garage addition, and 604 square foot second floor addition. Reduce the minimum side yard setback from 16 feet to 4 feet for an existing 134 square foot shed.
Good evening. May I have your name, please?
Christine Cataldo,
And your address, Christine.
24 Clover Drive, Smithtown.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you like this gentleman to speak for you?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. You're going to have to move that mic up.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Douglas Hines, Design Development Group, Stony Brook, New York.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Want to tell us why you're here?
Peter and Christine and their three young children, live in a rather busy neighborhood, as you can see from the aerial photograph. They're in the unenviable position of living at the corner of Veterans Highway and Clover Lane in Comac. Probably the second busiest set of roadways with Northern State right there on the whole island. And their overall aim here by proposing this addition is to reorient the house to Clover Lane rather than its historic orientation to Veterans Highway. Nonetheless, there is good separation from their neighbors in terms of screening and distance, as you'll see from the exhibits, especially on the west side where their closest neighbor lives. And that property actually wraps around us on the north side, so we only have one abutting neighbor. There's a 40-foot strip of land on the tax map there, which is heavily wooded natural buffer. In requesting the reduction of the front yard setback from 50 feet required by code 41 existing to 39 for the proposed two-story addition, we believe there'll be no unreasonable or substantial impact on the neighborhood. It is certainly not going to be visually obtrusive. You'll see from the photographs the wealth of screening on all sides of the property, even on the Clover Lane and Veterans Highway sides. It doesn't obstruct sight lines. We're up on a hill. Our practical difficulty, you'll see in some of the photographs, is that the land to the south of our property is on a plateau of sorts. We have just enough room to site this addition before the slope drops down close to 10 feet to Veterans Highway. And so we would be with some difficulty that we'd have to regrade and restructure the addition in order to put it anywhere else. Moreover, at 41-foot setback, the interior floor plan of the house wouldn't match up with our addition. We'd have to move it back 10 feet. For those reasons, the anticipated benefit is not readily achievable in an alternate location, and there is no environmental impact for the expansion of a residence. As to the shed, I'll be brief. By the way, the hardship on the proposal, of course, is not self-created. We haven't done it yet. On the shed, it's of modest size. It's located to the rear of the residence, although still technically in a required side yard, so we need two forms of relief. To move it 16 feet off that west property line would put it squarely behind the house itself and interfere with the reasonable use of the rear yard in the area immediately adjacent to the home. No environmental impact, and although the hardship is self-created, we would respectfully submit that alone should not be reason to deny the application. And that is our respectful request.
Okay, thank you so much. Planning? Gentlemen? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
It's regularly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Madam Chair, the next case, number 16941, Michael Carciopolo, 12 Mildred Court, Wisconsin, location east side of Mildred Court, 191 feet south of Carr Court. The property is zoned R10. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 50 feet to 37 feet for an existing 256 square foot deck.
Good evening. May I have your name, please?
My name's Michael Carciopolo. I live at 12 Mildred Court in Esconset, New York.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You need to speak in the mic a little bit, all right? Thank
Yes.
you. All right, you want to tell us why you're here, please?
I'm here because there's a pre-existing deck, 16 by 16, that was built in 1998. And I was told by my real estate lawyer that to sell my house, I need the proper COs and variances for it. So I'm looking for a variance from the back from 50 feet to 37 feet. It's a pre-existing deck, so there's no impact on the environment. It does not infringe on any of my neighbors because there's foliage on the front and rear and on the sides.
And were you given a summons? That's why you're here now?
No.
After all these years?
No. No summons. I'm being transferred to Florida, so I need all the proper COs and variances before somebody else can get a mortgage on the house.
Oh, you're selling the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Planning? No comments, thank you. Gentlemen? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Is ready, moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Chair, the next case, number 16942, Richard and Gwen Cody, 16 Rutherford Street, St. James. Location, southwest corner of Rutherford Street and Montclair Avenue. The property is zoned R21. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the setback of a 5-foot fence from the edge of pavement from 20 feet to 13 feet existing, increase maximum paving in the front yard from 25% to 30% existing.
Thank you so much. That's fine. No problem at all. Okay, may I have your name, please?
Tracy Rivera, agent for the applicant, P.O. Box 636, Mauritius, New York 11955.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I am here representing Mr. Rick Cody with the subject parcel as presented. He's here this evening due to clearing up some violations. I believe he may have gotten some summons in the past. We're here for two variances this evening. One is for a fence to maintain 13 feet instead of the required 20. I've submitted some pictures to the board. The property, as you stated earlier, is located on the southwest corner of Rutherford and Montclair. Montclair is directly up the road here. The pictures I submitted show the Subaru dealership whose fence does not meet the 20-foot requirement. The Ready Mix Center over there has fencing that goes very long, and that doesn't meet the 20-foot requirement. I also submitted pictures of the subject parcel. It showed a picture of the stop sign at the subject parcel showing there's no visual impairments. The property located directly across the street on a side angle shows you how directly going down Rutherford, headed east, the fences all vary in height from 4 foot to 6 foot, and they don't maintain the setback as well. As for the second part of the application, which is the paved area in the front of the property from 25% to 30%, I have a letter from the neighbor that would be most adversely affected. I just wanted to read that in. It's, my name is Gerard Chastain, resides at 18 Rutherford. Rick Cody has been my neighbor for 26 years. And that time we've never had a single issue. When Rick decided that he would like to put the driveway in, he consulted me first to make sure that I would not have an issue with it, explaining where it would go and that what it would entail. Rick is an asset to the neighborhood. His property is always kept in great condition, and he's still in favor of the driveway. Mr. Cody did hire a company to install the fence and an asphalt company for the driveway, not realizing there was going to be issues. I submitted pictures showing where the driveway is located, that there is a huge wall of arborvitaes. It's neatly kept. Also, I wasn't able to find anything directly in the neighborhood that you approved, but back on April 23rd, case number 16906 was approved from 25 to 30%. On April 9th, case number 16897, 25 to 30, and case number 16915 on May 14th was also approved 25 to 29%. I don't feel that anything is a negative impact. It definitely conforms to the neighborhood. Obviously, you can tell by the pictures how he keeps his home, and the rest of the violations that he has on the property are in the process of being cleared up upon this application. Any questions?
Planning?
I just have a question.
Sure.
That large concrete pad in the backyard, is that a basketball court?
It was, but I believe it's been removed, or it's to be removed, but it's a basketball court, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
That's to be removed. That's one of the violations I speak of.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
two sets of questions. First, actually, is to bring up the issue with respect to the fence. At first glance, in comparison to other cases, it looks like approving this would be approving a fence where similar cases were denied. But I'm not sure, the situation here might be different. I don't know if you inspected this one. Montclair Avenue, at least over part of it, is used a lot by trucks. So perhaps if this fence doesn't make the property to the south less usable for residential purposes, if the fence doesn't make the property to the south less usable for residential purposes, it might be approvable in your eyes. And also what's across the street. Because I don't think you want to create a situation where it makes it less livable for other people on the street. So I don't know. I have not inspected this, even though I've been on Montclair Avenue many times. I'm not sure what's right next to it. The second set of questions deals with, there are 3 other structures that are in the front yard on Montclair. Do they have variances? The house itself, the gazebo, and a plastic shed.
Yeah, when the application was presented, I'm here to do the hearing, Mr. Cody actually went down and met with someone in the building department, and whatever needed variances with the survey that was submitted was put on the application. Otherwise, they were to move to be conformed. So
Okay.
if they were not on this application, they were going to move to be made the zoning requirements that's necessary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, any other questions?
I do hope that you visit the site and see how particular this actual set is, because it is kind of set back and there are no visual impairments by the stop sign. And Rutherford does turn into a dead end, so by granting that, it's not going to cause any accidents or any issues.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we read the next application, I'd just like to make a statement. I can see that the next case is of high interest to this community. Oh, I need to close. Was there anyone here that wanted to be heard on that application? No, not this one, the previous one with the lady with the fence. Anybody? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing then.
So moved.
Second.
Really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, as far as the next case, I will make a statement. The applicant and the attorney will present their case. Then I will allow everyone one opportunity to be heard. If you live in the town of Smithtown, you may come up and I will give everyone an opportunity, whoever is aggrieved, to be heard. Your remarks must be factual, related to the variances. It doesn't help if everyone repeats the same information. If you agree with everything, please state your name and address and place it on the record saying you agree or disagree. As a board, our decisions are based on 5 criteria, and they're posted here for you. It is very important that this hearing is fair and orderly. There'll be no calling out or talking from the audience. There'll be no applause or outbursts. Everyone needs to address their concerns to this board. I'm asking everyone to cooperate so the court stenographer, the reporter, can hear and record all the statements. And then I will ask the applicant to come back and answer your concerns. I thank you for your cooperation and your orderly and professional manner. All right, would you please read?
Madam Chair, the next case, number 16943, St. Johnland Development Group, LLC, 199 East Main Street, Suite 2, Smithtown. Location of the property is the northeast corner of River Heights Drive and Route 25A in Smithtown. The property is zoned R21. The applicant requests variance to increase the permitted building height from 35 feet to 49 feet, 2.5 stories to 3 stories, reduce minimum truck loading spaces from 3 to 1, permit environmentally sensitive land, slopes in excess of 15% to be altered, permit structures within 10 feet of environmentally sensitive land, increase the maximum height of retaining walls from 6 feet to 12 feet.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is Richard Shire, S-C-H-E-Y-E-R, with offices on Lake Avenue in Wisconsin, representing the applicant. As a result of conversations with local residents after the town board meeting, we are asking to amend the call of the meeting downward for less relief. That part of the application requesting a building height from 39 to 49 feet, we ask be deleted. We will build within the 35-foot height. We still do wish permission to maintain 3 stories instead of 2.5. That part of the application requesting minimum truck loading spaces from 3 to 1 be deleted. We're providing the 3 spaces. That part of the application requesting heights for retaining walls, we ask be deleted. All the retaining walls we build will be in conformance with the code of the town, leaving us basically the issue of permitting environmentally sensitive land to be altered, which we will discuss at length. We have determined that only 12.1% of the actual site will be affected. The application was before the town board. It's a permitted use with a special permit. They have not yet decided. The matter is pending, and we were requested to come here by the town attorney before they make a decision. I should mention that the facility is a residential use, a compilation of 2 existing properties, each one of which has 1 home on it, the Bruce Willard property and the Lillian and Glenn Bowman property. The applicant is seeking permission to construct this 3-story, 100,000 square foot, New York State licensed assisted living facility with all the improvements. Whisper Landing will consist of 85 one-bedroom units, 6 friendship units, and 19 double 2-bedroom units for a total of 136. The facility will offer services to the residents, 24-hour supervision, security, meals, housekeeping, laundry, linen, personal care, scheduled activities, transportation to downtown for shopping, and similar features. This is not a nursing home. People in wheelchairs would not be eligible. This is for people who are getting older, don't want to live alone. They come and go as they please. Hopefully their children will come visit them on weekends. And there'll be only 1 access to the site. That's on 25A, directly across from St. Catherine's Hospital. I think everybody here knows what we're talking about. We've had issues that were raised at the town board meeting, which we're going to address for the purposes of 267B3, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties. We're going to have Mr. Breslin, who will qualify in a minute, as a real estate expert, Mr. Mazzola, who's a traffic expert, covering 2 of the issues that were raised. Before people showed a lot of concern, we're going to give you just a quick explanation of why the nearby properties will not be affected if this variance is granted. Then we'll produce our plan and environmental issue on the slopes. Basically, we're dealing with 2.5 to 3 stories within the building, and what I consider a relatively minor disturbance on this environmentally sensitive land, only on the issue of slopes. There is no environmentally sensitive land with regard to groundwater, animals, endangered species, or anything like that. It's just the one aspect. Those are the only 2 variances that are presently before this board. With the permission of the chair lady, I would like to call John Breslin, who is a acknowledged real estate expert, been acknowledged by this board, by the town board, and almost every board in Long Island, to discuss part of the first requirement for an area variance.
Good evening.
Let me have your name and address, Mr. Breslin.
Yes, John Breslin, business address is 44 Elm Street, Huntington.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. As we indicated, my name is John Breslin. I'm the principal and president of Breslin Appraisal Company with offices located in Huntington. With respect to this application, I was asked by the applicants to make a study with respect to its impacts under 267 of the town law for the variances that are being sought before this board. And in doing that, I was provided with the application materials, both before for this application as well as the application that was made before the town board. I reviewed the transcript of that application. I met with the applicants and, of course, visited the site and the neighborhood. I'm aware of the changes that have been made in the application to reduce the requested relief that's being sought before this board. My firm and myself have been involved in evaluating the impacts of assisted living facilities on Long Island and in Suffolk County in particular, essentially since the onset of those communities being established in Long Island in the last 20 years. And as you probably are aware, those facilities have been built and exist throughout Long Island in a variety of different areas, but primarily in residential locations consistent with this zoning district in the town of Smithtown. You can typically find them situated on busy streets like 25A and on Route 111 like you have the Sunrise Assisted Living in the town of Smithtown. They're typically used to provide some type of a transitional use between the residential communities that surround the busy streets and the commercial uses or the busy streets themselves. This location fits that criteria rather aptly. It's situated on the busy street, Route 25A, and those, there are similar type uses like that right in the immediate vicinity, like, of course, the hospital across the street, the townhouse development, the Sienna senior citizen apartments, as well as the other nursing home that is situated just to the west of this property, or east of this property. That's the Avalon one. I know the issues before this board don't necessarily deal with the use. I just wanted to discuss that briefly. The issue before this board is really with respect to the variances that are being sought for the environmentally sensitive lands and the height versus 2.5 versus 3 stories. The design of the building with respect to the 2.5 versus 3 stories the application has been changed now with the height being reduced to the 35 feet, the conforming height. The building height, you could have 2.5 stories within the 35-foot height. The difference would be if the applicant sought to build the building at 2.5 stories and 35 foot in height, because of the way the code was written, the building would have to be bigger on the 2 lower levels. And in doing that, that would obviously involve more coverage of the site with building and potentially more incursion into the environmentally sensitive lands and certainly more development of the overall site. As you can see from the site plan, very little of the overall site is proposed to be developed, actually be developed with the building and the associated parking areas and other facilities. Over 50% of the site will be not developed or revegetated after the original clearing. The bulk of the site will remain essentially green, as you can see from that exhibit that's before you on the board. If the building were to be developed in a strict conformity with the code at 2.5 stories instead of 3 as proposed, more of the site would have to be utilized. And I think clearly it's better to utilize the site as proposed, and that goes directly to the standard of 267B. Can the applicant do it another way? I think technically they probably could, but it would be better to have this site developed this way as proposed to going further into the property and developing more of it. It's better to leave the natural state for the rest of the land. With respect to the use of the environmentally sensitive lands, Mr. Kramer will speak more in depth with respect to that, but the applicant has designed the property to minimize the impacts of that by pulling the building forward to the busy street 25A and minimizing the impacts on the environmentally sensitive lands which are situated to the back of the property. The other variance with respect to the separation of the building and the environmentally sensitive lands with respect to this property is certainly form over substance because of the large separation between the building and the property lines. It's merely something that's within this subject property and doesn't have any impact on one of the surrounding neighbors. So I think when you look at the totality of the circumstances of the design of this property, it's certainly not going to have an adverse impact on the surrounding neighbors or the community as a whole. It's an ideally located site for this type of a use. The design of the property is, it's a use that one would expect to find on a road like this, Route 25A. It's consistent with the uses that are found on this street in this vicinity. All of the requisite municipal services are surrounding this property and available to it. The variances, I think, with the modifications that are proposed by the applicant tonight in the redo of the application are certainly not substantial, and clearly, I don't think it was created by the applicant. It was created by the code and the physical existence of the property. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, why don't you do, is there any other questions at this time? All right, why don't you continue with that presentation, and then if there's anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I call the next witness, I'd like to make a handout to the board, pretty much similar to what you see, but easier.
I'll take them, and then you can just go back to the podium.
When you're holding. The cover page is pretty much what you see on the easel. The second page is a schematic which will show you the walls. And the last page will show you the slope with the two 6-foot walls on it, which will be referred to later. I should mention one other thing before I call the traffic man here. When we were dealing with the neighbors, we did discuss that we will covenant that all of the property, basically from Lower Road through to this point, the planning department will be covenanted never to be built and be forever wild.
Okay.
All construction is where you see it. The rest will stay sterilized. Now, at the town board hearing, an issue arose about traffic safety on this particular site, and we have our traffic expert, Mr. Mazzola, who testified before the town board, and I'd like him to just briefly go over that subject as part of the issue of whether or not to be in a detriment to nearby properties as to 267B31.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Mazzola, M-A-Z-Z-O-L-A. I'm an associate in the firm of VHB Engineering, located at 2150 Joshua's Path, Hauppauge, New York.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
My firm, similar to Mr. Breslin's firm, has extensive experience in working on assisted living facility projects throughout Nassau and Suffolk County. As a matter of fact, my supervisor, Mr. Eschbacher, produced a paper several years ago, going back to the early 2000s, where he studied several of these facilities in Nassau and Suffolk County, and actually produced a paper which was published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. The traffic typically with assisted living facilities is a relatively light traffic generator. The peak hour traffic in the morning and the afternoon is generally the employees coming and going. Based on discussions with the applicant, and also based on our experience in other projects similar to this that we've worked on, the number of employees on the day shift and the evening shift is going to be somewhere in the range of 20 employees, and on the overnight shift it would be far fewer, probably in a range of 6 to 8 maximum employees. So the traffic going in and out, peak hour traffic, in the morning you would expect about 20 employees to be entering, and again the night shift with maybe 6 or 8 employees leaving. In the afternoon, it would be about 20 entering, 20 exiting at the same time. There's very few of the residents of these facilities that drive themselves. Most of them don't even own cars. In most cases, they're not prohibited from owning one, but there's no reason for it. These facilities provide transportation for their residents, and most of them are in a situation where they no longer drive. There is a little bit of activity from visitors on the weekends, but again, that's spread out throughout the day, and it generally peaks, late morning around lunchtime when relatives may be going to pick up somebody to take them out for the afternoon and then bring them back later in the afternoon. The ideal situation here is that the driveway to this facility Although it's located on Route 25A, it's going to be directly opposite the hospital driveway, so people leaving the site will be able to do so safely with the benefit of a traffic signal. In terms of parking, there's 80 parking spaces proposed for the site. Again, our studies show that the actual need is probably about half that number. Under worst-case scenarios, you could see on a busy Sunday a demand for 50 or 55 spaces, but based on our experience, it will never approach that 80 space demand. If the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions at this time? Okay, thank you.
I'd like to point out to the board one other thing we agreed upon with members of the community. The maps were originally laid out that Lower Road would connect in here. We agreed that if this is approved, we will never develop anything beyond this point of Lower Road as a condition, since this will be forever wild. Anyway, Lower Road will end where it is. There'll be no further development. We also agreed that some of the homes along the upper part, we would install fencing as whatever the planning department wants it to look like along the high part of the property, so they would be fenced, that they couldn't see anything, and that this road would be closed and never opened. That was part of what we agreed with the community when we spoke to them. I'd like at this time to present Mr. Kramer, who is a landscape architect and environmentalist who testified before the town board to explain the environmentally sensitive request for relief.
Why don't you give me these, I'll just pass them. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the
evening.
board.
May I have your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Thomas Kramer, principal firm of Kramer Consulting Group with office at 54 North Country Road, Miller Place.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. As Mr. Shire pointed out, I am a licensed landscape architect with the state of New York. I've been involved with the land use field and environmental issues since the early 70s. I'm past director of environmental protection for the town of Brookhaven, as well as the commissioner of the Department of Planning, Environment, and Development for the town, as well as other positions I've held through the years. I've been directly involved with several units or developments like this in the town of Brookhaven, and I'm thoroughly familiar with the way they operate. I won't belabor that point. It's been covered in past the prior speakers. But from an environmental standpoint, I was retained to look at it from both the planning and environmental issues. This action under SECRA is considered a unlisted action. It's not a type 1. A type 1 action would typically require an environmental impact statement. The impacts would be greater. And it's not a type 2, which isn't covered under SECRA, but it is what they call an unlisted action, which may or may not have impacts, but most likely it's not necessarily would result in environmental impact statement. From a land use standpoint, if you look at the entire site surrounding it is half-acre homes, the R21 for single-family development. Directly across Route 25A is the hospital complex with a nursing home. Just south of St. Catharines, across the street, are two multi-family developments. On the east side of 25A, a little bit south of and fronting on River Heights Road is another multi-family development. And south of this is a rehabilitation and healthcare facility. So what we have is kind of a area that this would fit into perfectly. It's healthcare, senior multifamily complex, and this kind of would complement that type of use. And the town board recognized this type of use as a relatively quiet, low-traffic generator. That's why it's essentially a special permit within the town's zoning category, residential, single-family residential category. As was pointed out, there are a number of significant buffers surrounding the site that protect the single-family houses adjacent to it, but yet concentrate the development close to the activity of Route 25A. The town's master plan, the comprehensive plan, even talks about such facilities like this. Under the heading Health, it discusses nursing home and related facilities. And I'll just quote one quick passage from there. It says, while the demand for nursing home facilities appear to be high, healthcare areas has evolved into a more sophisticated system, including adult homes, assisted living facilities, senior daycare, and continuing care retirement communities. The change in this type of facilities appears to be directed towards reducing the institutional type of care, allowing more residential opportunities for seniors and those needing long-term care. Again, this is like as the way Jack Leisinger used to explain, one of the original chairman of the town of Brookhaven Planning. You have the SLOGOs, which is nursing homes. You have the GO-GOs, which are the retirement communities, and these are the SLOGOs. They're the ones in between. They don't need a nursing home. They're not in wheelchairs. They're still active. These are seniors that are out there, and they're part of their community. This is really almost like a clubhouse for them where they can live, and there's different functions provided for them. So it's a highly desirable facility that they're capable of living in and still maintaining a high quality of life. Again, the comprehensive plan continually talks about this. I won't go through all the passages. I do have it in the handout that I gave you. The environmental conditions of the site. As I said, the town has environmentally sensitive land, and it basically defines 7 categories that are considered environmentally sensitive within the town, and they're probably the crux of what other environmental impacts, if you're looking at environmental impacts, it's generally these core 7 things that could be impacted. In this case, under the town's code section 322-3B, it talks about the 7. And again, you have the report, I have all the handouts in there, and I won't go through each one, but I just want to touch on what they are. The first one is special flood hazards areas. We looked at the FEMA maps. The nearest flood area is elevation 9, which is over 3,000 feet away to the south. This site, which elevation 9 means that, elevation 9, you're going to have potential flooding. We're at elevation 48, so we're well outside of any sensitive areas like that. The depth of seasonal high groundwater table, less than 10 feet. The site ranges, the depth below the site to groundwater ranges from 28 feet to between 42 and 50 feet. So we're significantly above any groundwater problems, which would allow us greater abilities for groundwater recharge, purification of sanitary system, although we do have a chromoglass system that reduces the nitrogen. It's essentially a self-contained underground sewage treatment package. It's computerized. The sewage passes through and is discharged into leaching pools just like a regular cesspool. So nothing's above ground, nothing's exposed. And with the significant depth we have to groundwater, that would leach down through and it would be essentially a giant sand filter. Freshwater wetlands. The site, the nearest wetlands, designated state wetlands, is approximately 900 feet to the south, which is part of the tributary of the Nissaquag River. We're significantly removed from any wetlands in it. There is a pond and open water, which that's another issue that is a little bit further south, which is created by I think it's Willow Lake Apartments complex that's to the south. Again, that's a man-made situation there. Again, number 5 is the distance of less than 100 feet to the nearest surface water. And again, there's no surface water within 100 feet, The nearest one is is a little over 600 feet, about 664 feet to be exact, is the Willow Lake Complex, which is a man-made body of water. Poor drainage soils as defined in the U.S. Soil Conservation Service. This site contains Carver Plymouth sands and Plymouth loamy sands. These are both defined as rapid permeability. Other areas, we do a lot of SWIP tests and soil percolation. In most cases, these soils, they're unattainable, the percolation rate, because as fast as you pour the water in is how it goes out. So you can't even determine how fast it percolates down. So again, this is not bad soils. This is essentially sandy soils and would percolate very well. There would be no standing water. There would be no problems with drainage or sanitary effluents. A habitat of protected, threatened, or endangered species. Again, I've visited the site. I've done extensive field work on it. It's essentially a oak hickory forest as defined by the state, which is relatively common. You also have successional forest and mowed lawns around the houses where, so the habitats themselves are not unique. Looking at the Natural Heritage Program maps and their databases, there's no endangered species within the area. Any endangered species or threatened or endangered species are further to the south, generally associated with the Nisququag River. Going back then, the only issue that we have is the steep slopes on the site as far as whether land is sensitive or not. Originally, the prior plan talked about, well, it's approximately 30% of the site has what's in the town's definition steep slopes, greater than 15%. In the grand scheme of things, 15% is not a significant slope. You can work with that. A lot of times the slope's a lot greater. In fact, you can stabilize the slope quite easily at 1-on-2, which is about a 45-degree angle. The soils in this area, that's probably a good indication. Most towns use 3-on-1, which is 33%. However, the 15% gives a good indication on what is, quote, steep. So it's generally, you have to take additional precautions and different additional concerns with slopes that are greater than 15%. However, with the grading that's proposed on the site, the original plan showed eliminating approximately half of those, and it worked out to about 50% of the steep slopes on the site were being impacted. The new plan brings that down to about 40%. My report still reflects that as far as the 50%. And if you really look at if you look at the site, and I think in field, once it starts being developed based on the grading, you're probably going to have less than the 40% disturbed also. We can, with the various mechanisms and how we would grade, I think you can reduce it down. I think the engineers, when they did it, kind of did a broad stroke type of thing and didn't really get down into it. I think a lot of the trees and all that they're showing as being removed will most likely be preserved. But I think for, permitting purposes, I think the 40% is an accurate representation. In the field, I think that will be much less, is using proper design and consideration at the time of construction. As I said, building on steep slopes, in most times it's frowned upon because of not necessarily the sensitivity of the slopes themselves, but what will happen if they're disturbed, namely erosion, sedimentation downstream. Once a site is disturbed, other impacts can occur downstream, by it washing away if it's not properly handled. And in fact, in the past, that has occurred. One of the things that has resulted, that is in effect today, which is highly beneficial to something like this, is the SWIP considerations. state pollution, the stormwater pollution prevention plans. That's that's been handed down from EPA to the states, and now to the towns are administering it. What this does is essentially set up a framework and requirements of sediment erosion control and protection and constant monitoring of sites, steep slopes. As I said, this particular site, we're probably in the areas that's being disturbed are probably the shallower slopes, 15 to 20% in there. And although we're cutting back in and creating steeper slopes, I think the most severe slopes, as far as being out in the field and investigating them, are set further back, and it's in the area that's being preserved. So it's the areas setting in here and along here are the areas that's being preserved. Some of the things that I talked about before would be the areas in here. We can probably tighten up some of this as far as when we ultimately do the grading. However, for representation here, I think this is inaccurate. This area here is being cleared. It's relatively flat, and that's where the denitrification or the chromoglass system would be going in. And in the front, probably a lot of the large trees would be able to be saved. However, those would be supplemented with the landscaping. As far as the grading on the site, there is proposed 2 sets of retaining walls. Originally, there was one large retaining wall, approximately 12 foot high. Now it's going to be tiered. That will allow the ability to screen them. Plantings both in front and on top of them would screen the walls. As part of the site plan, there will be an extensive revegetation of the hillside, and we can essentially create a habitat similar to what existed there previously. Certainly the slopes, they're not uncommon for the North Shore of Long Island. We are in a glacial moraine. And Smithtown in particular has significant slopes that are within the area. However, this particular site doesn't propose any significant detrimental slopes where we're unable to build, and where it couldn't be mitigated and protected. Those that we do have to impact, the ones in the back could be protected with proper mitigation and sediment control. If the board has any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
Yes, just a minute, please.
I have 3 concerns on the impacts of going into the slopes. I think they could be mitigated, but I want to know if your client would be willing to do it. First, from a drainage situation, do you know how much of the property will be impermeable once the development is done?
I don't have the EAF in front of me, but
Okay.
We would be able to handle everything would be directed into dry wells and would be able to contained on site. As I said before, the soils on this particular site are extremely permeable.
Okay.
We're able to recharge it, and most likely, given the permeability of the soils and the volumes that's required by the town to contain, I doubt whether we would even, have ponding in any of the recharge in any of the dry wells,
Okay.
that it would percolate straight through.
Since the soil permeability is good, would your client be open to innovative drainage of rain gardens and that sort of thing?
Certainly, they can be, and we've designed quite a few of those to incorporate them into the landscaping, into the topography, and in many cases either do away with or at least reduce down the number of structures. Essentially, we can create for lack of a better term, a landscaped shallow recharge basin.
Mm-hmm.
That would be shallow. It would just look like a garden, as you said, a rain garden. Yes, we can certainly incorporate that into the design.
Something like that, I think, would be important. Water leaving this property would go to 25A, and certainly some of it is bound to reach the Nissaquag River. So whatever could be intercepted on the property and try to leave the water leaving the property as clean as possible and as close as possible to the way it would be if the land were natural would be good.
Yeah, I believe that there will be no water leaving the site. We will
Okay.
design the system so that we will contain, I believe it's 8 inches that could be contained on site. And as you said, we can do it with various innovative measures. I particularly like the idea of rain gardens. I think that could, rather than just strictly engineering solutions, can be incorporate both a aesthetic, a natural solution, as well as the engineering solutions.
The second concern is broken into two. It's two visual impacts by going into the steep slopes. When you look at the drawing next to you, the bright green almost looks like, gee, that's all lawn area. And I think you had said that the steep slopes behind the building could be vegetated to be put back into basically a natural state.
Yes.
Would your client be willing to vegetate those steep slopes in a way with native woodland vegetation, including native evergreens like holly, cedar, and pine, white pine?
Yes, yes. We did a similar job like this. If you're familiar with where Stony Brook Post Office is down in the village, those areas were, in order to build the cultural center and expand the post office, we had to cut into a substantial bank. And we moved, it was almost 80,000 cubic yards of material. The slopes that we established in that area were 1-on-2, essentially 45 degrees. And that was done, I guess, about 6 years ago now. And if you go down there now and you look, if you, other than somebody like yourself that's familiar with the natural habitat, I would doubt anybody else would be able to tell the difference whether it was natural or not. We used a mix of native species and both evergreens and deciduous shrubs and trees, and we were able to essentially create a natural environment right there. Yeah, I agree with you. This the graphic was done by an engineer, not by a landscape architect. Let's put it that way.
And related to that, the steep slope that's close to River Heights Drive, that's where the olive green seems to pinch the most. Would there be a way to vegetate the 25 to 50 feet that would be cut into in a way that basically the building wouldn't be very visible at all or almost completely screened from River Heights?
Yeah, we talked about that extensively in our meetings with the applicant, and we talked about using a mix of evergreen, deciduous evergreen, like say hollies, different viburnums, and and essentially mixing them in through this area. Most of that area is relatively light understory, and there are several white pines through there already that do break up the view.
Right.
We would look to accentuate that. Like I say, use hollies, some trees. Again, evergreens are extremely difficult for to put in that can withstand a lot of shade. But rhodies or things like that.
Rhododendrons and mountain laurels and stuff.
Yeah.
The last part about that, and this is sort of a belts and suspenders mitigation, is if the vegetation doesn't work as well as you think it does, what I would recommend, well, in anticipation that it might not work as well as we think or you think it does, the belt and the suspenders, would your client be willing to have materials on the building that don't contrast with the woods on the other side of 25A or the woods around it, so that it's not sticking out like a sore thumb, or very, like how white would show up through the middle of vegetation?
You're talking about more earth tones and not a lot of.
The chair doesn't like that word, but yes, something that blends in more with the scenery.
No hot pink or anything like that.
Well, sometimes though that, at least from what I had learned, is contrast is usually the thing that people object to.
Yes.
And so white contrasts, even though
Right.
everybody might like the White House or historic homes or Stony
I don't
Brook.
think any-
Something that blends in more like a state park type of a building or a federal park building.
A lot of attention went into the design of this building. It's not, and from what I think my clients would agree with that. Yes, he would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it would be, we
it-
don't want it to stand out. We want it to blend in, become part of the community.
Because I
is
think from
really
a
what-
town planning standpoint, the use is important. The location seems logical. It's opposite the hospital. It's on a state highway. But it's not fair, or it might not be fair to the neighbors who live close to it. But if they can't see it, and it doesn't have access to them, then as far as I could tell, at least preliminarily, it wouldn't impact them.
Yeah, I agree, and to be honest with you, a lot of talk went into our in-house meetings as far as how to do that. And although the color scheme didn't come up, but I agree with you, certainly a great deal of discussion came up with regard to additional landscaping, additional buffer plantings throughout. And like I say, I agree with you as far as doing something as far as the color scheme of the building. The building itself is extremely attractive. It doesn't look institutional at all.
I know what you mean, but people have different tastes.
That's true. Yeah.
I might like vanilla and you like chocolate, and so you might think it's nice and the neighbors don't.
Yeah, I agree, but it's certainly architecturally interesting, and it's not modern.
Right.
It's something that I think would fit into the community, and it really looks like almost a large hotel of the Adirondack type of flavor. Certainly, it's not modern. Certainly, it's not the institutional type of facility that has cropped up in so many places that they try to pass off for architecture, but.
I apologize for prolonging this, but one impact occurred to me while you were talking. What noise impacts would there be with this? Air conditionings, garbage trucks, things like that?
Well, there will be air conditioning units. Again, those will all be buffered. They will be all situated, down low behind walls. Garbage trucks, there will be garbage trucks coming in. Again, as far as as far as when they come in, that can certainly be worked out. We've done that on other projects where garbage pickup was only during the daylight hours, not middle of the night type of thing. So I mean, if the board's concerned with that, that's something that could certainly be worked into any type of approval, and I think my client would agree to that. And it has been used in other areas. Air conditioning units nowadays, they're not like they were years ago. I mean, they're relatively quiet, and there's buffering.
Yeah, what we
that's
worry
available.
about today are generators.
Yeah.
As more and more storms come by.
That everybody has them in their backyard. I mean, when the storm came through, I had mine going. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I have a question on your septic system.
Yes.
Let me see if I can explain it correctly. You're going to excavate down, build some kind of a concrete vault, then you're going to put your equipment down into that?
They're essentially prefab units. They're fiberglass units that are computerized. They have everything in there, and that whole unit gets buried. There is an access to it if anybody has to go down there, but they're so automated that if there's ever a problem, they will call the person up, and who's ever in charge of it will call them up and say there's a problem with this type of unit. And what it essentially does is it's a mini sewage treatment plant. It processes the waste, digests the waste, breakdowns the waste, and it's a completely eliminates nitrogen, and then it discharges the effluent.
All right, so there's no solids collected in these tanks?
It breaks them down. It breaks them down, just like in a septic tank. Periodically you may have to do it. You may have to go in like a septic tank, but the whole idea is they essentially break down and digest.
Right.
Just to be clear, all of the effluent is contained underground in tanks, though?
Yes. There's no. It's not like the old sewage treatment plants where you have ponds or anything else. This is essentially, I guess the best. Have you seen the fiberglass gasoline tanks that they're installing in,
Yeah.
it looks something like that, and that gets buried in the ground, and then that pumps the effluent, once that's essentially the sewage treatment plant, that's buried, you don't see it, and then it pumps into a leaching field that's underground also, and that
Right.
then leaches in.
But it breaks the solids down 100%.
Yeah, it breaks it down. It
What's the name of
digests
that
them.
system?
What's that?
The name?
Chromoglass.
CHR.
Right.
Are you familiar with the one on Landing Avenue?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. Because I wonder if it's similar to that one.
In the past, they were using a lot, they had a denitrification system that the health department was pushing for a while. That had problems.
Right.
This is almost, like I say, it's almost like a small sewage treatment plant, but it's not exposed. It's totally underground, totally self-contained. As I said, it's so computerized that if something goes wrong, it will call up the person who's supposed to be taking care of it and say, you got a problem, get down here.
The one on Landing, to the best of my knowledge, is a chromoglass system, and I haven't heard of any odors from it. Just because I haven't heard it doesn't mean they don't
Yeah.
exist, but I haven't heard any complaints.
No, they're as I said, everything's underground, so it's not like regular sewage
There's no
treatment
vent?
plant. It's a self-contained
It's like a
unit.
septic system.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, pretty much. Computerized septic system. Right. I just was handed the note. Suffolk County Department of Health Services, they're the ones that regulate the chromoglass system, and it would be done according to their rules. So, as I said, in the past, the health department used the denitrification system, which was kind of a system they developed, but this is nothing like that. This is all self-contained, and there's no open areas, no open leaching like a regular sewage treatment plant would be. This is all self-contained. You're welcome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Without being painfully long, I only have one other item I want to cover. From the purely legal point of view, and that's the question of precedent. We are aware that this board, in BZA application 16759, granted in January 4th of this year, 2013, the Wickton office building at 1092 West Jericho Turnpike. That is one where 49.3% of their environmentally sensitive land was altered. Almost 82% of it was cleared, and their environmentally sensitive land total when they were through was 40.5% that was affected. This case, it's 12.1%. I bring it up because whether the area variance is substantial, the 12.1% compared to a site right down on the west side of town with a 40% differential, which this board granted this year, should be significant. If the board has no other questions, we'll open it to the public and we'll answer what questions you raise for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's anyone here that would like to be heard in this application, I'm going to ask you to line up over here, okay? So that we're not wasting any time waiting for people to come up. One at a time, please. Just, you can move back a little bit so they're not, yeah. Okay. I'm going to ask you your name. I'm going to ask you to spell your last name, your address, and I will swear you in. Okay?
My name is Glenn Gruder, Gruder, 22 River Heights Drive, Smithtown, New York, 11787.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals and staff. My name is Glenn Gruder. I live on River Heights Drive, right opposite.
Mr. Gruder, take your microphone with you, okay?
I know what the map looks like. I live right opposite the area that would probably be preserved, and if the application ultimately was approved, would probably be covenanted, and I applaud that. I like that. I also applaud the applicant for withdrawing his request for a height variance. One of my greatest concerns was the height. I also do not oppose assisted living facilities as a concept. I think the town probably is in need of assisted living facilities. However, I would suggest to this board, and I know you're not here for a use variance, this is not your special exception, it's the town board's special exception, that nevertheless, this proposed use at this particular site is inappropriate because it backs up to 2 residential neighborhoods that are improved with nothing but single-family homes. If this use was proposed across 25A, St. Catharines has a lot of property. You have a senior citizens housing complex. You have Willow Lake. You have multifamily all over that side of 25A. You don't have, but for Avalon, okay, but for Avalon, you don't have multifamily or anything that would look like, as Mr. Kramer said, a large hotel on that side of 25A. And that large hotel would impact River Heights Drive, and it would impact Lower Road to the detriment of those neighborhoods. And it might not take a year or 2 years, but over 5 years, because the property values immediately opposite the proposed use on River Heights Drive and on Lower Road would ultimately creep up River Heights Drive. They creep into that neighborhood, and that whole area, which is a beautiful area, improved with 1-acre lots. I walked my dog around the whole neighborhood. No 2 lot is the same. No 2 houses are the same. We love the neighborhood. We're proud of the neighborhood. This project at that location, in my opinion, would hurt those neighborhoods. However, I do have some initial procedural objections as well. I examined the Zoning Board of Appeals file on Thursday, June 20th, 2013. I am very familiar with zoning applications. I am a zoning attorney by trade. Rule 2 of the rules of this board require that an application to the Zoning Board of Appeals be accompanied by either a building permit denial or a notice of appeal stating the specific grounds upon which the applicant is appealing. Mr. Shire, in his comments, said he came to this board at the suggestion of the town attorney. I do not dispute him for 1 second, but Mr. Shire, who's been practicing zoning a lot longer than me, knows that the town attorney does not constitute the town code, cannot change the rules, and certainly cannot change the town law. This board can only hear a variance in its appellate jurisdiction. Just because John Zolo directed Mr. Shire to go to the ZBA does not give this board any jurisdiction absent a building permit denial or a notice of appeal, which, as of Thursday, June 20th, was not in the file. So with all due respect to this board, it's my opinion that everything tonight is void. I'm going to move on. You don't have to address it. But absent a building permit denial or a notice of appeal, which is required by your rules, we don't have a proper legal hearing under the town code or the town law. And I do have the rules, and I have a case, Brenner versus Snieto, I'll hand up at the conclusion of my presentation. In addition, and this probably, I'll make this brief because it really doesn't go to your jurisdiction, you can only build an assisted living facility pursuant to section 322(9)A of the town code, quote, where that use is indicated in the table of use regulations. That's what the town code says. You are allowed to build or develop property with an assisted living facility, quote, where that use is indicated in the table of use regulations. When you look under the table of use regulations in the R21 zone, you will not find assisted living facility as a special exception by the town board or by the ZBA. So it is my opinion, with all due respect, that to develop this property on this site for an assisted living facility requires either a use variance, which has not been applied for, or a change of zone. There are a lot of speakers. I will move very quickly to the variance issues, which is the environmentally sensitive lands. We heard tonight from, I believe it was Mr. Kramer, but maybe it was Mr. Shire, that 30% of the land, 30% of the site has steep slopes. And that is consistent with the information which was filed on the environmental assessment form filed in support of the town board special exception back in the fall of 2012. But I want to point out that the plan before this board only indicates 84,535 square feet of steep slopes, not the 163,592 square feet, which was computed from the EAF. But the applicant did make, for the record, clear that it was 30%. The town code says construction of anything on environmentally sensitive lands is prohibited, with 3 exceptions which are not relevant here. My question, therefore, to you, to this board and to its council, if you cannot alter environmentally sensitive lands, and what they're seeking to do by this application is to alter environmentally sensitive lands, I submit that that is not an area variance, that is a use variance. Because the use of environmentally sensitive lands in construction is prohibited, and they're seeking relief from that. Now, I understand that this board has granted area variances for environmentally sensitive lands probably forever. That doesn't necessarily make it right, and I would ask for your consideration on that. Just because something's gone on forever doesn't necessarily make it legal. I would also submit that since the town code prohibits construction within 10 feet of environmentally sensitive lands and also prohibits any construction on environmentally sensitive lands, that this board is without jurisdiction either in an area variance or a use variance to vary that prohibition. Because what is the purpose of a section of a code which prohibits altering environmentally sensitive lands if you can just get a variance from it where another section prohibits construction within 10 feet of environmentally sensitive lands? Now, I am not familiar with the office building where this board granted a 40% variance to alter environmentally sensitive lands. I have no knowledge of it, and I don't dispute what Mr. Shire said. But one of the factors that you must consider is whether a variance is substantial. Assume for a moment that the town code said you could alter up to 5% of the environmentally sensitive lands on the site. It does, and it says it's completely prohibited, but assume it said 5%. By this application, they're seeking to alter 40%. The original submission was 50%. Mr. Kramer said probably more like 40%. If the code allowed 5% and they were going to 40%, that would be a 700% variance, which I would respectfully submit is very, very substantial. I have a question that hopefully Mr. Shire can answer later. I applaud the fact that they've gone from 49 feet to 35 feet. My question is, by doing that, to keep their density, are they expanding the footprint? I'd like to know the answer to that question. There are other speakers. You know, Mr. Kramer said that altering environmentally sensitive lands at the steep slopes is, quote, frowned upon. Well, I would dispute that. It is absolutely prohibited in this town. And with that, there are a lot of speakers.
Okay, thank
you very
so
much.
Thank you. May I have the next person, please? Right to me, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I have your name, please?
My name is Xinqun Huang. Last name Huang, H-U-A-N-G.
Okay.
I'm
Need
the
your
house.
Wait a minute, please. Do you need your first name? Spell your first name, please.
Xinqun.
Okay. Let me have your address.
My address is 57 Luce Street, Smithtown, New York, 11787.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair and board member. Good evening, lawyers.
Excuse
and
me.
experts.
Just address this board, please.
Okay. Before I start, can I ask a few questions for the traffic expert because I didn't
No,
hear?
just ask the question, and then I will have the traffic expert do it later on. Just pose your question, and then we'll
No problem.
answer all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I will limit my question to a very, very narrow question. Therefore, I leave the chance for other people to continue ask questions to the traffic expert if they have some other question. My question will be narrowed down to the travel expert. He claimed that he only add 20 people to the daily traffic. However, he didn't specify that whether these 20 people has significant difference than every other driver on the road or not.
Face this board. Go ahead.
Okay. The reason I'm saying this is because these 20 people, number one, they take shifts. And their shifts, if it's 2 shifts, so they work 12 hours after they leave the building. Not as everybody else, not as those housewives, not as a regular driver on the road. What does that mean? That means they may be more fatigued than any other people. That means they may be they have much more chance than other people to cause the traffic, to cause the accident. The speeding limit on several parts of the Route 25A, sometimes it's more than, at some place, it's at or more than 40 miles per hour. So, and they don't have some isolation area, isolation zone in 25A. So, let's say in this way, I drive in the morning at 40 miles per hour, and someone leave the building, they drive against me at 40 miles per hour. And this person, if they are, because today they take too much care, they take care too much for those old, for those senior people, and they feel fatigued, and all of a sudden they just close their eye, and maybe we have a head-on at 80 miles per hour. Okay. 80 miles per hour, it can cause me to lose my life.
All right. Thank you so much.
And and I want to say, what I want to say is, you can add 20 regular people on Independence Day at the Jones Beach, but you don't want to add 20 people with a backpack that has a pressurized cooker to the Jones Beach, because these 20 people is not a routine, regular people, and that's my point.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I have your name, please?
Jan Vanderbaan, 57 St. John Lund Road.
You're going to have to spell your last
I'm
name.
Vanderbaan.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Okay. Thank you.
We have the property, my wife Linda and I have the property, as was introduced in the program here, on the corner of 25A and River Heights Drive. Okay. I will not comment on the project. I don't have any belief that any of us have the ability to stop some development of this property somehow. But I refuse to allow it to go forward until somebody does something about the intersection. It is, if not the worst, one of the most dangerous intersections in Smithtown. There are more deaths there than there have been anywhere else. I get a little emotional, so kind of bear with me. We pulled a lot of people out of a lot of accidents. I know one of my neighbors is here.
Please,
I don't know where she is.
just address this board, please.
All right, anyway, the long story short, I won't allow, and I will fight to the end, any development of the property until the state and the town can get together and do something about the intersection of River Heights and 25A.
Okay.
The deaths count up every year. Do something about it. It's partially your fault. It's partially the state's fault. They can't get together. The other thing is, and this for the traffic guy, he didn't even talk about that intersection. One group here said, these people won't be driving. Somebody else said, this is a facility for the improvement of their life and the freedom of them to get around, which indicates to me that these people will be driving and will have cars and will be in and out of this place, adding not only to the staff, but to the residential traffic of that facility. I think that's going to be a problem until they figure out what to do with that road.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, please. May I have your name, please?
My name is William Hastback. I live at 6 River Heights Drive, and I'll be glad to point that out on the map if you allow me to pull that out so some of the folks in the audience can see it, and then I can also see the points that I try to address.
All right. First of all, spell your last name.
Hastback.
All right, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Go ahead, but you still have to address this board, okay?
I just want to point at the chart.
Okay. Take the mic down if you need to. Can you do that? Okay.
As I said, I live at 6 River Heights Drive, which is probably the house that will be closest, if not one of the 2 or 3 closest houses to the actual structure here, and suffer the greatest impact from this. I live approximately right here, and I'm going to be looking at this 3-story apartment building. Let's call it what it is. A 3-story apartment building in a residential area, operated for profit. I'm greatly concerned about the destruction of the vegetation along that slope between River Heights Drive and the structure. There are some relatively large trees there, as well as some, smaller trees, but those trees protect my property from northwest winds. You take those trees out, it's going to come blowing down the fetch from the driveway at the hospital across this property into that upslope, and then bang, it's going to hit the trees on my property. That northwesterly breeze is going to be directing any tree fall from my property directly onto my house. But currently don't have a problem because we have the great windbreak of all that vegetation on that opposite side of River Heights Drive. I don't think that's an insubstantial problem for me. Additionally, removing all that tree buffer is going to expose me to light, noise, odors, and whatever else this facility is going to generate in its operation. Another consideration that I have, and nobody has brought up, is the fact that there's going to be 120 people plus staff. Most of those 120 people are elderly people, relatively elderly people, many of them on multiple medications, and I want to know whether any consideration has gone into the highly prescription drug-laden wastewater that's going to come out of this facility and into the ground right there. And in order to solve that problem, I was wondering if the applicant has given any consideration into hooking into Suffolk County Sewer District Number 6. There's a pump station just a few hundred yards or less down the road on Route 25. That means the pipe must run up 25A to the Suffolk County Sewer District Number 6 in Kings Park. And if they could hook into that, it would resolve the issue with discharging heavily prescription drug-laden wastewater into our groundwater. And then finally, just I'd like to say that a solution to one group's problems that creates problems for others is no solution at all. And I can assure you that a solution that results in a 3-story apartment building being built only a few dozen yards from my front yard with the existing buffers of trees and hillside being destroyed is a permanent and major problem for me and completely unjustifiable and inequitable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Good evening. Craig Andreoli, A-N-D-R-E-O-L-I. I live at 209 Cambon Avenue in St. James, and I have a business address at 373 Route 111 in Smithtown.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm an attorney in Smithtown, been an attorney for 20 years. I have my own practice for the last 6. The practice is exclusively elder law and estate planning. And I want to just point out that assisted living facilities are a true benefit to a community, and I just want to remind people exactly what we're trying to establish here and who it's going to help. Seniors are an often overlooked sector of our population, and assisted living facilities address certain issues that we take for granted as we become older. And I just want to briefly remind people that assisted living facilities can give seniors, first of all, safety. We want to make sure that, as we get older, we become frail. We're not as sure-footed as we used to be. We certainly are prone to fall. Assisted living facilities are going to offer people around you. Oftentimes, they're going to issue alert pendants and have safety systems within the rooms. So if someone falls, it may not be a day before they're found. It's going to be adequate for people to help them, even if it's up and down in a chair. Also want to recognize the fact that this is a socialization for seniors. Friends are going to be there for them. Oftentimes, a senior is going to have a wife that maybe predeceases them. Their friends may have predeceased them. This is a community where they can get together to make new friends, to go to festive occasions. And so socialization is a very important part for seniors. And in my practice, I see that living alone oftentimes accelerates depression, and it's truly not something advantageous to that senior. So if we can socialize them in a community like this, it's very advantageous. Nutrition, shopping, getting to the stores, oftentimes is difficult for a senior. They don't get the nutrients that they normally would have with a home-cooked meal because cooking at home becomes arduous. Here at assisted living facilities, they're going to get an opportunity to have meals. Not only that, they're going to have nutritionists available to make sure that those meals are nutritious for them, and it's going to be targeted towards their own dietary needs. Healthcare, as we're on that, usually nurses are employed to monitor the health care of each of these individuals. These seniors often will communicate with the nurse at the assisted living facility. They'll communicate with the physician who's treating that resident, and their promotion is through
Excuse
wellness.
me. You do not talk out from the audience.
Housekeeping.
Excuse me. I'm not going to ask you again, please.
Assisted living facilities are going to take care of the mundane like housekeeping. It's difficult to vacuum, clean the refrigerator out, make sure that the yard work is upkept. All these things that seniors don't need to do as they grow older. Certainly a benefit for any senior.
Okay.
Transportation, there's been a lot of discussion of transportation. Many of them don't drive in my experience, and the aid of having a transportation, a bus, take them to shop, or take them to a store, or take them to a community service, that is certainly a benefit for seniors. They don't have to worry about the driving and getting around. And most importantly, and I'll end with this one because I want to be as brief as possible as an attorney, and that is family roles are going to get back to normal. I see all the time a spouse playing caretaker or a child playing caretaker. Assisted living facilities are going to allow the spouse to be a spouse again, to allow that child to be a daughter or a son, and to act as mom and dad to their own children, opposed to having to constantly care for that senior. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Next, please.
My name is Christy Golden. I live at 20 Lower Road.
Okay. I think he can spell your name.
K-R-I-S-T-I-E. Last name is Golden, G-O-L-D-E-N.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I spoke at the public hearing that the town board held when the project was first brought forth, and I mentioned at that time that I'm a doctor and an administrator for a large hospital and healthcare institution, so it's interesting to listen to the sales pitch on assisted living facilities we just got. There's no doubt that assisted living facilities are useful. That's not in question here. It's a matter of whether or not it's appropriate for that location. At the time, despite the fact that I understand the value in assisted living facilities and the potential for a naturally occurring retirement community area based on everything else that's in that region, I still object to the project for a variety of reasons, particularly it's in my backyard. But I will give you some copies of what I gave to the board when I first presented back then for your own reference. But I do have some questions for the applicant tonight that I'll present to you with the hope they can respond to later. First, just to reiterate a question that was asked earlier about the change in the footprint. If they're not going up as high, are they spreading out? That's question number one. If you could please clarify if there's any changes to that. Second, the gentleman here tonight stated that individuals that have issues with ambulation and use wheelchairs will not be accepted into the assisted living facility. Now, the idea of an assisted living facility is to allow people to age in place. So if you have individuals that are getting hip replacements, knee replacements, among other things that are going to prevent them from continuous ambulation, what will happen when somebody begins to use a wheelchair? Will they be kicked out of the assisted living facility, or will they continue to maintain their residence there? So please, if you could answer that question. Third, I see in the new picture that the lot that was in front along 25A was moved, so I'm assuming that the building has been shifted further towards 25A. The idea in the evening, for the evening shift that we presented at the last hearing, was that the individuals who worked the overnight shift would be restricted to use of the parking lot against 25A so as not to disturb the residents in and around the facility. So if that parking lot has been moved, that will impact that, and the parking will then have to be in the north lot, which again, lights will disturb the residents all along Lower Road, especially if the trees are removed. The retaining wall structure was described before. As it was changed, there was talk about trees being on the retaining wall. I want to clarify that trees will be along the top of the very top section of the retaining wall if it's a tiered retaining wall. I'm assuming that the applicant has done an investigation of the demographics in the area and what will populate the assisted living facility once it opens. They talk about it being 3 floors. More often than not, the 3rd floor of an assisted living facility is for those that are memory impaired, which is wonderful for the services that it can offer, but it also requires that they consider having an alarm system so that if there's individuals that wander out of the building, you have 25A right there. And as stated before, probably one of the most dangerous intersections in all of that area. The school district doesn't even allow the buses to make that left-hand turn out of River Heights because it's too dangerous. So I have a question for them. Is the 3rd floor or is any part of the facility going to be dedicated to those that are memory impaired? Okay, another point. Going back to what he was saying before, that there will be expected to be a lot of people who are self-sufficient and able to ambulate and move around on their own. As I'm sure all of you understand, none of us likes to give up our ability to drive, and none of us likes to give up our independence. The 56 Suffolk County bus runs up and down 25A in that area. So there'll probably be people, or you would like to believe there will be people, that will want to take the public bus as opposed to having to wait around for the transportation from the facility. If that's the case, you're going to have people crossing 25A in order to catch the bus going eastbound. So you should consider that as well, that it's another instance where you're going to have people crossing the street to take public transportation in order to head up into the town of Smithtown. If they get on going westbound, they'll be going up into Kings Park, which is the only safe way to board the bus in that location. A question came up about the garbage trucks. In the original hearing with the town board, it was stated to be requested to be in the covenants and restrictions that the garbage trucks not be able to deliver or pick up garbage in the early morning hours or in the evening. So during daylight is not really acceptable when the sun comes up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you hear a dumpster crash down behind your house. Right. So I ask that to be considered. I just want to make sure that I've covered everything that I took notes on. So there was a discussion before about the color of the building. Obviously, that's something that's going to be important. I, right now, have woods behind my house all the way from my backyard to 25A. Those will be eliminated for the parking lot. So I will see the parking lot, and I will probably see the corner of the building. But out of respect for my neighbors to the left of me or to the south of me, color of the building will be an important piece. Who will make that final decision? That's a question that perhaps you can answer for me. And I think that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Tom Kelly, 82 River Heights Drive, Smithtown.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I have a question about the traffic study that was done. I live on River Heights Drive. There's cars cutting through now, and I think this has been discussed at the last hearing. People going to the hospital. We'll have additional cars here. They talked about the shifts being in the morning and the afternoon when kids are getting on the bus. In my immediate home, there's probably 35 or 40 young children that live in the area. We can have these cars running, people running late for work, they're zipping down the block. So is there a way to put a dead end on River Heights Drive where it goes up in the hill just so traffic can't go through? Can we dead end that block? Because we have people going back and forth, back and forth. Why don't you dead end it? It was years ago. When you go down River Heights, you're heading towards 25A, it circles up. Can you dead end it there? I'm not in favor of this project. I think it's going to give a lot of people hard times. I know even going out on Somerset with the additional traffic you can't get through. So if you don't block that hill going down, people going up and down that hill, you're in bad shape. Nothing's going to happen.
Okay,
Thank you.
you so much. One more? Okay. May I have your name, please?
Yes, good evening. My name is Peter Yang, Y-A-N-G. I live
Okay.
at 14 River Heights Drive, Smithtown.
Good. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I just can't get over the fact that they've twice mentioned luxury hotel in my neighborhood, okay? Both at the last meeting and this meeting, a luxury hotel in a residential neighborhood. How are they going to design this building to address noise, a kitchen, a commercial kitchen that's going to serve 300 meals a day, 2,100 meals a week, okay? I don't think there's a restaurant in Smithtown that does that kind of volume. Would you agree? Okay? They're going to put that in my backyard, my front yard, I should say, okay? It's not so much of not wanting an assisted living facility in my backyard and the whole NAMBY acronym. It's why so much in my backyard, okay? Why the hospital? Why the apartment building? We have enough in our neighborhood, okay? You're talking about tiering the retaining walls, 6 foot. Okay, you know what? 6 foot is a deadly fall. There's an OSHA rule for 6 foot fall. I'm in the construction industry, 30 years in commercial construction. I've built 6 of these type of facilities all over the tri-state area. The biggest complaint are from the neighbors, odors and smells. And there are no ways to address it when you build so close to a residential neighborhood. It never seems to work. It always is a Band-Aid on an open wound.
Thank you so much. All right. We need to just stop for a few minutes. They need to change all the tapes up in the television room, all right? So if you just give us a couple of minutes, and then we'll finish up.